Hello, this is me again. Now, I'd like to talk about tourism and its relationship with climate change, and a little bit about the concept of stranded assets. So, let's just dive right in. Who still remember this line from the Lion King movie? There's more to see than can ever be seen. To me, there's nothing can be better at describing the world we live in today. There's too many beautiful places out there, more than we can ever visit in our life. By the way, who doesn't like swimming under clear water accompanied by exotic fish? Who wouldn't enjoy taking gondola rides through the historical canals in Venice? Who isn't thrilled watching giant lizards, so-called Komodo, in Komodo Islands, that we couldn't find anywhere else in the world, right? Well, I do like traveling, and I assume everybody does love traveling too. So let's see how tourism have grown since the 90s to the 21st century today. In 2018, there were 1.5 billion arrivals in touristic sites around the world. Besides, it brings a lot of cash for the society too. Thanks to the ease of transportation, especially air travel, now more places are connected than ever. Besides, the economic growth and the emerge of social media have contributed to bring tourism to where it is today. Tourism provides one job out of 11 jobs available and streams 10% of the global GDP. However, there is one big issue when it comes to tourism. It is extremely weather dependent, and by extension, climate dependent. Who will travel during a big typhoon? In fact, many flights are cancelled in case of extreme weathers. Tourism is one of industries that are highly affected by climate change. Climate change can affect tourism in many different ways, either directly or indirectly. A good example of an indirect effect of climate change on tourism is during extreme weathers. No flight is able to transport tourists to touristic spots. Or tourism might be affected too by a higher standard on air travel in terms of emission level that can raise the cost of transportation. And for the direct impacts of climate change, I provide this diagram to explain it better. Climate change, as reported by IPCC, or Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, can cause many implications, such as rising of global temperature, sea level rise, extreme weather events, and changes in precipitations. We all have seen how climate change can take many different shapes and forms through recent news. Just imagine a domino effect caused by climate change. The rise of temperature can lead to ocean acidification, as well as the reduction of dissolved oxygen in ocean that eventually caused coral bleaching and a wider damage on marine ecosystems. Temperature rise can also cause melting of glaciers in Arctic, while change in precipitation can cause extreme drought in one area, while causing extreme rainfall in another part of the world. Recently, we've heard about the wildfire, for example, in Australia, and also flooding in Venice. These are some examples of what climate change is capable of. Even though it's rather out of context, since now we are discussing about how climate change affects tourism, but I think that would be fair if we also see what tourism has contributed to climate change. Tourism and climate change is a twofold relationship. Tourism have impacts on climate change, and likewise, climate change also have impacts on tourism. The first relationship should demand for mitigation measures, such as actions on reducing greenhouse gas emissions, while the latter should ask for adaptation actions. Therefore, actors in tourism industry should not only think of how to adapt to the climate change, but they also should think of how to mitigate and comply with the climate mitigation actions. According to the latest research in 2016, transport-related emissions from tourism contributed to 5% of man-made emissions and are to increase to 5.3% by 2030 if the current ambition is not increasing. Tourism is also accounted on 22% of emission in transportation sector. Also, last but not least, tourism might give direct destructive impacts on environment. For example, the damage on coral ecosystem because of cruising ships. From the previous explanation, we should already understand to what extent climate change can affect tourism. This concept is actually not new. Environmental risk, specifically climate risk, have been one of the risks that should be considered in risk mitigation by every business sector, especially ones that are affected the most, for example, tourism. Then, let me introduce another term, stranded assets. By definition, stranded assets mean assets that have suffered from unanticipated or premature write-downs, devaluations, or conversions to liabilities. Okay, for the sake of simplification, stranded assets mean assets whose value are not valuable anymore, or assets who've undergone devaluation. Many things can strand assets. For instance, imagine a coal company in Australia. Coal is a valuable asset for the company only if they can make use of the coal, or in other words, burn the coal. What happens if Australia's climate policy, in which there's a mandate to divert to renewable energy, really puts into force? Yep, some company cannot burn coal anymore. Their assets, which is coal, is still available, but now, since it should stay in the ground, it's been devalued, not valuable anymore. Environmental-related risks that can strand assets include changes in policy, such as carbon tax or renewable energy mandates, but also by physical challenges that I have mentioned previously. For example, snowpack decline in a number of ski resorts because of global warming. Okay, so we're reaching the end of the presentation. So, these are some references that you might want to check. Knowing the importance of tourism, I hope we can start taking actions to achieve sustainable tourism industry, or at least try to reduce the risk. Okay, bye guys. Thank you for watching.